You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 69. This podcast is dedicated to CIRCUS. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for everybody else to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. As always, I want to start this episode and every episode with a huge thank you and shout out to my Patreons. Patreon.com is a website that allows people to give small amounts of money every month to artists and artistic projects that they want to help fund. And this podcast is one of those artistic projects. And I want to thank each and every one of the people who went to www.patreon.com/theartistathlete and has pledged to give even as little as $1, because every dollar counts. And I super appreciate, especially during this time, that this podcast can keep going, can keep being a source of inspiration and a place of connection for a lot of the industry and the people who love it. So thank you, Patreons. If you want to become a Patreon, you can go to www.patreon.com/theartistathlete and pledge today. My guest today is Lauren Joy Herley. And to give you an idea of the interview you're about to get, which is such a treat of one, I want to read Lauren's bio, kind of taken from her website in her own words, but written as if it were third person, because I'm not going to speak for Lauren. I'm just going to read. Lauren was born within the Pisces-Aries cusp, known as the cusp of rebirth, thus defining much of how she works. She enjoys reaching the extremes of her physicality, pulling energy from the depths of her feminine sources, both fierce and fragile. The stage is her place of communication, of complete presence and focus, allowing transformation to occur. She carries multiple years of professional experience to the stage and each rehearsal space. She specializes in vertical rope and contortion. She's also a practitioner of all kinds of acrobatic research. She has studied and performed disciplines from hand to hair hanging. Since her graduation from the National Circus School of Montreal, she's worked and toured internationally with multiple world-class directors and companies, including CIRCUS, Cirque, and Cirque du Soleil. She's also worked as a specialty act for many different venues and events. She continues to grow as an artist while taking acrobatic and artistic risks both on stage and in the rehearsal room. I also just want to say that I really love how this episode sounds. There's some clattering of plates, there's some cups and sounds of drinking, because Lauren and I are sitting at her kitchen table eating croissants and drinking tea. And it kind of reminds me of like old school artist athlete podcasts. Like if you go back and you listen to like the episode with Fred Deb, you know, like the very early days when I just had one microphone and was like, please speak into this a little louder. There's something kind of nostalgic about it for me. So if you hear the background noise, enjoy it, because we did. We loved our croissants. Here's my interview with Lauren Joy Herley. Lauren Joy Herley.
Yeah, it's my full name.
Your full name. Do you go by Lauren Joy or Lauren?
Depending on what people want to call me by. I remember when I was working on Broadway, Pippin on Broadway, the stage management loved to call me Lauren Joy. Mm-hmm. So I just let them do that. Whereas I tend to always just go by Lauren.
Yeah.
I even at times when I'm doing gigs or galas, I get asked to be introduced just as Lauren before, unless it's kind of a more prestigious like festival atmosphere. Then yeah, just pronounce Lauren Herley. but I would say kind of just Lauren.
Gotcha.
My go-to stage name, quote unquote.
It's super Southern to have like two names, you know, like a Lauren Joy.
Right. Yeah, it's true. That is maybe.
It makes me think of that.
Yeah.
So, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Say who you are and what you do.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Lauren. I'm 30 years old. I'll be 31 soon.
Happy soon birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll have my birthday on tour again, which is always fun. And I am a professional circus artist for quite some years now. I specialize in vertical rope, Aerialist. I'm also a contortionist and an acrobat, as well as I practice handstands and I've practiced all kinds of, disciplines from hair hanging to hand, all these kind of things you touch on when you've started it at a young age and also performed and collaborated so much with different companies. I am currently with the touring big top show Bazaar by Cirque du Soleil, where I play the principal female character, quote unquote.
Why do you quote unquote that?
It's like kind of fancy, it's this fancy name they call it. She's the floating woman, the character, which I love very much. I love very much playing this character. It was fun to be kind of cast to create it on a blank canvas kind of, alongside the director. It was very nice to have so much input in it and place my heart really in it, and I get to kind of evolve her every day.
Oh, interesting.
It's very
so
fun.
Did they have the image of the floating woman and then come to you, or were you hired and then together with the director, you created this character?
Mm-hmm. So I was contacted for solo rope, which interested me. Cirque first offered me a gig at 19, to go to Vegas. And I was like, I just auditioned for this school in Montreal, and it was actually really awesome. The best thing that happened to me, I think.
Oh, interesting. So you turned
this school
down Cirque to go to ENC.
And they also, the casting agent in Vegas was very much, she said, you should do that. You're young. And it was really the best doors that opened for me for that, going to the school instead of taking that first, that feels good. I'm 19. I got this offer when actually I went and learned another language, could specialize really deeply and master my disciplines and create multiple solo acts. And then all these doors open with multiple companies. So it was really the best thing that happened for me. But so over the years, I had lots of good offers from Cirque du Soleil and did events with them, but never actually did a touring show with them. And then when they contacted me over 2 years ago for Bazaar, it was for Aerialist. It was for rope. And it was a bit rushed for me. I was getting asked to sign a contract for a different show with the company I'd worked with a lot. And they were kind of like, okay, expecting the contract at the end of that week. And then I kind of got this proposition. And I, of course, told them, yes, you can propose me this project. But I kind of wanted some more detail on it to see if I myself wanted to partake in it. And it's super confidential at this time. It's super, and they're not even sure. There's tons of meetings going on. So many people need to put their stamp on something before saying exactly what the plan is. But they were able to get back to me within like a week, 10 days, and tell me, yes, we really want you for solo rope. And would you be interested in playing a character? We've kind of evaluated other of your videos, and there's going to be like a trickster like character, and we want a female to play it. Originally, they were thinking a male to play it. And I said, yes, let's do it. That's what I've been doing now, kind of full time, but Bazaar's schedule is a bit intensely strange, but I really love it. We immediately after creation had to have this 3-month break because cargo had to get shipped and organized to India. So I was able to take 2 big gigs with 45 Degrees, or now it's called, Cirque du Soleil events and experiences, which was great. So I was really able to stay occupied. So they allow us to freelance in between these breaks, just as long as, I'm insured on my own as well. Mm-hmm. And when I'm on tour, I have my insurance with my employer. So we kind of get to benefit, if you're proactive enough, you get to benefit a bit from the two worlds and keep your mind active as well. It's a little bit less repetitive. And then when you go back on tour, you do your 10 shows a week and still get to get on that grind. And then
that is really nice. So like a normal Cirque du Soleil show, it would be like a 2-year contract starting out or something where you're touring all the time with them.
It's more like, let's say if you did a different big top creation, you'd probably do your, premiere in Montreal, and then you'd start a North American tour, which is a bit more like 2 months in a city in essence, and then a week off in between cities. So it's really much more constant, and you just stay in North America for maybe up to, 2 years.
Yeah.
In all these A markets. Whereas Bazaar, we were created to break into these new markets for Cirque, which was hard. It's hard, actually, the kind of destinations we went to, but truly, truly beautiful, life-changing, even after 8 years of international touring that I've been doing now, or even a bit more. We went to places I hadn't been yet. I had never been to Lebanon. I'd actually never worked in India yet. I'd never been to Africa. So these were things also that interested me about the offer. Like, okay, I'm not only going to have a great job with this and learn something artistically every day, but I'm going to learn something. Like, I'm going to see new things. I'm not going to be, the same person after this first year.
God,
even.
that sounds so wonderful.
So it's been very great. I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. Can you explain something you just said that is really interesting? I don't think I've ever heard this expression before. With Cirque, actually. It's like the idea of an A market.
Right.
Yeah. What is this?
I mean, depending on what kind of destinations you're going to, cities, and the size of a show, you go to different markets. I think that an A market would be considered New York City, would be considered Houston, Texas, would be considered San Francisco, Los Angeles.
Okay, so big populations.
Right, an A market would be Paris.
Okay.
An A market.
Western, it sounds like mostly.
Right. I think an A market would be Rio in Brazil,
Okay.
An A market would be Santiago, maybe depending on what area you are in Santiago. So Bazaar were a bit tinier of a big top. We did the creation within their original kind of big top. So we seat about 1,500 people in Bazaar, which is a bit less.
It's small.
So what's very cool is then these different countries that haven't had Cirque du Soleil get to their countries before can bring us there, and we can find sites because we're a bit smaller. We can find sites in these cities. So Bazaar, I believe, is more of like this kind of B market, hip, little intense show, which is
that's
cool.
Dope. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you're creating, something I find really interesting about you as an artist is that you have a nice level and a bunch of different disciplines. So rope, contortion, all of these things that you do. And something I feel like a lot of people ask is, how do you find time to train all of it or to keep the level up?
That's a good question. When I was younger...
Also, if you want to pause and actually eat something, please do.
That's a good question. I was very lucky. I will start that I was born with some good genetics, I think. For one, I was born with this kind of little hinge area in my back that just kind of bent. So when I went to take my first class of ballet at 6 years old and transitioned into artistic gymnastics, this part of my back was always bending. I was very responsive to the stretches the coaches were giving me. But then also I was very fast twitch. I was dynamic. I was a tumbler. I continued doing bar ballet as well as competing. And I was nowhere near, the best gymnast, but I was kind of like this underdog with this weirdly little flexible side, but built muscle really fast. I was quite, costaud, as they say here in Quebec. Costaud, I think. Do they say it in France as well?
Costaud.
Sure. Costaud is like kind of muscly and thick, So I have been working in all these kind of ways with my body since, 6 years old. So when I transitioned, when I knew that I did not have a future with sportive gymnastics, and realized too that I wouldn't go get a degree in dance, because I was mainly for the last too many years competing in gymnastics. So now it's like, I'm not a dancer either, but I just knew I'd get wisps of my future ahead of me. And I just knew exactly that I would be living somewhere else, traveling, probably speaking a different language. I just knew it had to be done. So when I, at 17, began transitioning into circus, finishing my final year of competing, my body responded super well. And so I fell in love with climbing. I fell in love with rope immediately. Something about it felt good. And I was very discouraged by people to do it. People were telling me, this is a boring apparatus. This is really hard. Physically, you have to train so much to make something look interesting, which are all actually pretty true things. It's an old apparatus. It's traditional. And I'd be like, okay. And I'm going to the library researching more in circus because, nobody in my family knows anything about it. Nobody. So I'm trying to get some more knowledge on it, figure out where to move from, what kind of.
And where are you at the time?
So I was born in Seattle.
Okay.
United States. Yes. So I'm looking up these things, and then I have a great friend who's told me, you need to go to Montreal. And I'm like, okay. But first I went to San Francisco. So this is like 2008. This is a long time ago. And I go to San Francisco for about 10 months into what they were calling their professional circus program, which was a great experience for me because I came in as this like acrobat who didn't know what kind of potential I did have in this art form. And there I just did everything. I was like, I want to do rope. Let's try lots of other things. And they're like, you're going to do Mongolian contortion, swinging trapeze, straps, Russian style and Chinese style straps, Russian style acrobatics, Chinese style acrobatics. And you're going to do some tissue as well. So I just was like, this is circus. I did just about everything, but I knew I wanted to do rope. And even there, I was kind of told, yeah, you look good in the rope, but I wouldn't choose it as a specialty. I was kind of told it wasn't the best decision, but I knew something about it felt very good. But that was a time for me also to realize I did not know I could do, a full allongé classic with my bum on my head. My Mongolian contortion teacher made me see just how far I could push because I hadn't tried. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I love this art form. I love doing contortion.
And you were with Searchma, yeah?
Yes. You know
okay.
her?
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
My God, I probably haven't seen her since I was 18 or 19. But
she's been on this show too, so listeners can
she's amazing.
Go back and hear that one. Yeah,
truly, that was lovely. A shaping moment for me. I didn't know, I just didn't know what kind of potential was in there. And I could tell, though, at that moment, if I'm going to be a contortionist, it's going to be more acrobatic, dynamic, fast twitchy kind of contortionist. And it's not going to be my main specialty because it's just, I'm not one of those passive, mouthpiece when the thighs are relaxing on the head kind of contortionist. I can get the bum on the head and I feel great in the handstands and crocodile to handstands and the Mexicans. And I've got good endurance too. If it's doing stacking, we would do these skills. It's great. But I knew this would be like a complementary discipline for me. Because remember, that's when I got a phone call from Cirque du Soleil asking me to go to Vegas to do the show Love. It was like a week before or either a week after I had auditioned for Montreal. And I was like, oh, this young 19-year-old, like, oh, my ego, my goodness. That feels good. But then it just worked so well that I got into the school in Montreal and went there. So I knew what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to do rope. And I was already thinking and I want to eventually minor in contortion with a mix of like handstands and acrobatics. And that's exactly what I did. So I did the school in those 3 disciplines in essence, which are, now I realize, really like physically intense disciplines. It's like kind of like, it's not like if I was minoring in hula hoops, which is totally challenging in its own manipulative way, but it's not putting your bum on your head for 2 hours and handstands and push-ups and then also
having to go
2
climb a
hours of
rope and
sure. There were days I couldn't feel my shoulders, and I have this serious acrobatic background. I kind of feel like I've been groomed for and placed it now into an essence of muscle memory for all these disciplines that I do. I'd signed contracts with CIRCUS before I graduated school for the creation of CIRCUS, which was, we were all hired for our multi-talents ability, you know. So I was, doing rope in this show, but tons of acrobatics. I was doing a bit of hand-to-hand. I was doing contortion. I was doing triple trapeze. So jumping on the Chinese pole, you know, you're doing a bit of everything. So just you doing your shows and your warm-ups every day and your drills. And it's just me maintaining all of those disciplines. Absolutely. Does that mean, when I freelance a bit after that and I have a contortion solo act for a corporate event, I need to rehearse that because I'm in my show, you know, so I have to be a bit more proactive to, I put arabesque here, this handstand there. Oh, the arabesque is less stable right here because I haven't done one in heels or something. So that's about being proactive. But in general, my body, since I worked for 8-9 years now internationally, I've been lucky that all of the gigs I took were having all of my disciplines get practice. When I worked with Sedwa, with Pippin on Broadway, I was doing everything from hula hoop to flying a lot of hand-to-hand and contortion. And then I went to Circa, and I was always having a rope contortion solo, doing tons of group acrobatics. So that was awesome. And then now with Cirque du Soleil, and when I've done events with Cirque du Soleil, sometimes that's so fun because it's like, I'm hired here to do tissue and some choreography. And it's like, wow, this is like pretty nice. And then actually when you get taken as a lead character, when you're used to working in these smaller companies, it's just, that's your muscle memory. That's what you're used to doing, is being on stage all the time, being sore all the time, and doing your specialty, but also your complementary specialties. It's what is demanding about that is just the fact that it is 9 to 10 times always a week. And the act I do is, it's like a 6-minute rope act. And all the contortion acrobatics I do is basically from animation till, you know, almost end of the show.
Oh, wow.
And I'm almost 31, you know, I definitely can feel different now than I felt at like 23. But truly, to maintain these though too, I have to be extra proactive. Absolutely. And when I get called for a gig at CIRCUS during a tour break, that is contortion, I have to review all my other vocabulary because in the show I have my go-tos. And when you're doing it 10 times a week, there's times I'll improvise and throw in a bit, but then sometimes you just need to do what is easiest, pulling out of your pockets. You can make your 10 shows a week. So I'll have to be proactive about that, review my notebooks. I have notebooks with vocabulary written down that I'll revisit, you know, my training yesterday and today, really with contortion especially, and me having that natural kind of muscular, fast twitch body. I have to be proactive, definitely. My psoas, oh my God, they get so tight. All the leg lifting and being sharp and quick in the rope. I think that as acrobats in general, our psoas get just devoured. So I have to be very proactive with that. Like I said, and like I could feel younger, I would never be that passive, like contortionist, really buttery, really be more like a fast twitch, but hitting all those lines. Yeah. But, so I have to be very proactive with that. And I feel very different during a tour break than I do on tour. It's like I can relax into a stretch. I can. Whereas on tour, it's like I can't. I get a bit, just everything tenses up, but I still have to feel that and do it anyway. You know? It's kind of like that saying, you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, you might be a bit tense or afraid before going for something, whether it's something physically in your life or a step, you know, you have to take next in your life. You kind of have to feel it and do it anyway. So even though I'm really sore or I know I've done this skill tons of times, it's just been a while, I can't just trust it and chuck it on stage. I do need to do it before. It's kind of that proactiveness, I think, that has protected my body so far so good. Never had a surgery. Almost 31. pushed it really hard. So that proactiveness, I think.
No, I love that word. You used it a couple of times just to be like very proactive.
Yeah.
Like none of this happened to you. You made it all happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested, like listening to you talk about you were with Circa, you were with CIRCUS, you were with Cirque du Soleil. You've had like, not only do you do a varied amount of disciplines, your career has been so varied. I know so many people who they sign with Circa, they sign with a company, and then they stay with them for almost a decade. How do you make those kinds of professional choices?
So me, I remember when I auditioned for the school in Montreal when I was 19, so like 12 years ago almost. I got asked by the director of the school, who she is still the director of the school. She asked me, she said, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I looked at her and I said, I see myself having worked with all the top companies in the world and still working with all the top companies in the world and having made a name for myself. And she just like, she of course was like smiling. She was like, oh, okay.
She's like,
bro, she was pretty adorable actually for my audition. I had a very nerve-wracking but pleasant time, I definitely, when you say something, you're giving importance to it, and there's no backing down from that, And I'm one of those people, though, since I was very young, I haven't spoken too much about my dreams, but I've just showed them, So I said that to her in that moment, and I went, yeah, you better do that, and you're gonna do that. You will do that. You will do that. You need to hustle, and you need to, this is your time. No time needs to be wasted, So that's how I saw myself from that time on, is I'm not gonna seek a comfortable choice. Some people like staying within a company for, 10 years or so. This is awesome, Everyone is different, and it's no difference between quality of artistry. But for me, I just knew I wasn't going to be pushing myself if I didn't get myself out of comfort zones. And also, I was very young with CIRCUS when I was with CIRCUS. I was young, and I knew, okay, when I finish this 2 years, I need to leave and hustle and get that name out into the freelance world, into with other companies, so I can start getting nourished, and growing as an artist. I just knew it. Did I have to step out of comfort zones? Absolutely. Did I break relationships for that? Yes, absolutely. Was it hard? Yeah, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Now I take all those experiences I have, they're all like sitting on my shoulders, a bit, just kind of these great experiences with different artistic directors all over the world, and all my improvisational skills I've grown with. It's just, they're here with me. And now when I'm mainly, full-time with Cirque du Soleil, it's such a great tool. It's my experience that I carry with me, and words that different artistic directors have said to me. I really wouldn't trade it for anything. Now that I know, though, I'll most likely stay with Cirque du Soleil for I don't know how long, or switch eventually maybe in 5-8 years to just being a travailleur autonome, freelance. But truly, that was something I knew I was going to do. It was difficult, but I'm super, super happy I did it.
Yeah. What are some of the most valuable words you've gotten from artistic directors?
Oh, I loved being led by Gypsy Snyder for a bit. She's incredibly raw, and she's such a...
One of the seven fingers?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. She comes from circus at its, most raw form. Times have changed even since then. It was so hardcore back then. And she's been through all of that. She's excellent at guiding improvisations. Of course, my director and now good friend, Yaron Lifshitz at Circa. Oh, he can be super poetic at times with what he says. And what I love about Yaron, and what I believe was in my instinct, from day one when I became an acrobat, is he believes, and I truly believe as well, that in circus alone, we do not need the use of music, visuals, lights, any kind of costume, makeup. Circus in its purest, richest, most precise, excellent, rawest form alone has the ability to move an audience to its roots. I really believe in that. And it makes me emotional when I think about it. You know, I really believe that circus is some kind of special art that really separates itself from other art forms. This element of humans becoming superhumans for one fleeting moment, just for that feeling. And we do it, it's grueling. We do difficult schedules, and that all for that pure art form. And it's so true that circus in its purest form has the capacity to move audiences to just to their deepest core. It really does. But it has to be done with excellence and precision and something raw too within you. It really has to be done super well. So those beliefs from year on was definitely awesome for me. And he and I really connected. I had a great time when I worked with Cirque, truly. And then I also had awesome words from my director at Cirque du Soleil. I worked with Susan Gaudreau, who has a huge career. You know, she was dancing for La 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 Human Steps and Ballet Jazz de Montréal. You know, she was all over the world as a répétitrice. And she would always be able to see me when I'd be going in my head and judging myself or starting to stress about all the show I had ahead of me. She would just always tell me to go back in and to trust my instinct. You know, this is something that you say to a mature artist, though, definitely. You know, this is somebody who the director's able to see, oh, she has an instinct on stage, you know, and she could tell when I would get stressed and start, judging what I just said in the microphone, and because my character talks in a microphone, and you need to go inside and trust that instinct. And it would just bring me in that present moment, you know, and that's still today, the 10 shows a week. If I start getting tired, it's like, I just go, who can I look at right now? And I'll make eye contact with my singer. I'll make eye contact with my other character I play with on the stage. And it just takes me in that present moment. Because there's certain times your body totally knows what to do. Really, when you do it that much and you've worked that hard, you have to remain always focused in your mind, but you can't start thinking about what's remaining in your big show. Sometimes things are more stressful thinking about them. Just doing it, you know, when you're starting your double, triple show a day, you just got to go in and go into that present moment. So Susan was definitely somebody. And I think that there's a magic that happens. You know, there's my author, one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, wrote something. He said that when we touch on to the present moment, when we're actually present, totally and entirely present, we touch on something that's eternal, you know? That's why that's that feeling, you know, when you're present, you touch on eternity. And I think that's what makes people feel this kind of rush when they let themselves get swept away with a performance. It's because you're really feeling the right here, right now. And the present moment is really powerful. And we're touching on something bigger than us, something invisible. That's a really big thing I believe in this, to tapping into that present moment. Yes, and that's something I tell myself all the time. I had a director in the past always tell me, ici maintenant, which is French for right here, right now. I just whisper it to myself often. I even whisper it to myself on the rope mid-act. If I'm starting to rush or think about the next drop ahead of me, you know, sometimes your mind's going a million miles an hour. And if I just tell myself, ici maintenant, it's just like right here, right now. Yeah. And I can start thinking about those. I take the rope like this, and it's just like that moment right here. I'm alive. The audience feels something. Nobody can put a word on it, but they're feeling something. So it's really cool.
That's super cool. No, that makes so much sense. I think presence comes from that ability, presence that you talk about, stage presence. It comes from that ability to be present to me. The people who always, I don't know, even in life that I'm super attracted to are the people who are always just here with you right now, you know? There's something really refreshing about that.
It's kind of this invisible force, and nobody can really put their finger on it. But I think that being present, and I don't think you can be present without being vulnerable. And this is why I think since I was a young girl reading, Marilyn Monroe's autobiography, with her small journal and these kind of feminine, I was always attracted to feminine icons, especially. But there are certain qualities in women like Marilyn Monroe, like Bjork, like these women are able to tap into this childlike woman they are, which is vulnerable and able to let themselves get swept away with these small little daily miracles of life.
Wow.
And that's something that's precious. I can think about that on a stage. I can let the light kind of hit across my face and wonder like, that feels nice. That's warm like the sun, or that, it just takes me into that moment. So I'm no longer just an acrobat on a Cirque du Soleil stage. It's like, it's like they're seeing some kind of image of themselves. They're seeing this kind of human that they can kind of tap into and go, oh, I've felt something like that, when I walk down the park myself, right? So then when you do what is superhuman, in essence, they get even more moved.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, what outside of circus are your artistic influences? Because I do see like a lot of references to kind of like vintage or Marilyn Monroe, 50s, those kinds of, the feminine.
I think from a young age was attracted very much to feminine energy. I enjoyed seeing, a woman just be in her skin and totally accepting of whatever curves and angles her body was in, and owning that and giving some kind of, feminine touch to everything she did. I was always like, since I was a young girl, wanted to be around that, and was, I think, also naturally like that.
Which is so interesting because you're such like a fast twitch powerhouse, which you always associate like strength with like a very masculine
I've got huge shoulders. I've got like the hugest shoulders and lats you could ever see. I'm like 5'1.5", but like 125 pounds of muscle. And I've always been this athlete. It's so true. And always been super, into masculine energy. I love being around men, of course. I'm like a huge fan. But for me, myself, what kind of nourishes me, and I kind of like to, as myself, as a human being, I like to kind of be this woman that could be timeless. I like when a photographer photographs me and it could look like that photograph was taken in 1953, but really we took it in 2019 or 2020. I kind of strive to be this kind of timeless woman, this kind of timeless artist as well. I get really touched when people see the show, the one I perform with Cirque du Soleil, and they say, you're like a woman from the 1940s, 1950s, an actress. I'm like, okay, I'm tapping into something here. It's like, because these actresses like Lauren Bacall and Marilyn Monroe, and incredibly feminine, these femme fatales, but also very clever. If you read between the lines, they're very clever. They're very intelligent. Marilyn knew how to use her sex appeal for a very classy, funny, brilliant way. So I try to use those ways to not play my show in a first degree, if you know what I mean. I read books, all kinds of books from fantasy books, which I love, from Philip Pullman, or I love to read Shakespeare. It's a challenge. I'm reading Macbeth right now. These kind of tragedies, these kinds of really gets my imagination going. So I can stand on a stage, and if I want to feel stoic in a moment, I can picture a whole scene behind me, like a Victorian kind of scene. And I just tap into images in my imagination to take me places on stage. So these are sources I look for outside of circus. I'm watching, Hitchcock films, film noirs. I've seen dance shows tonight. I follow all kinds of
who are you going to see?
Netherlands dance.
I want to see it so bad. I think I'm going to go tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tickets. And I take Gaga workshops. I'm a big Gaga person.
Oh, cool.
I've seen, Ohad Naharin's work a few times, and it was like, life-changing, of course. So outside of circus, I search for
so
what
much.
I'm reading.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, in essence, or just like self-motivational work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly. I'm constantly hearing things like, feel your nerves, but do it anyway, because, even though I've been doing this so long, I still get butterflies every time.
Wow.
And especially if it's a big premiere night, a red carpet event, and I'm still nervous, and I'm very happy that I am, because those butterflies really tell me that this is important to me, and I love it still so much. I use those things as tools to place these kind of positive words in my mind, because as why I believe people get moved from watching circus in its purest form, or even an athlete in its purest form, is we've all felt that inner voice inside us tell us we can't, or question, or imagine the worst case scenario. That's all in our minds. It's kind of this constant battle we go through in life. And I think whether we like it or not, life is a lot about an emotional, mental battle that kind of goes on within our own mind.
Totally.
There's a kind of spiritual warfare that kind of goes on, and it's true. And you have to be able to tap in to the positive side and like feel that fear and do it anyways. And you have to feel the nerves and do it anyways and conquer it, and fill your mind with positive things saying, no, I'm going to do this. And no, I'm amazing. You have to tell yourself that in these stressful moments. And it's not in any kind of ego building, narcissistic way. It's a way of creating inner dialogue that is positive for yourself and conquering.
Yeah.
And this is what moves people, because we all have felt that. And when you see somebody who's conquered that in those fleeting moments on stage, and those, you're going to touch almost 100% of your audience, because you've tapped into something that we all feel.
I've almost been thinking recently it's almost more narcissistic to like stay in a place of like, oh, I'm not good. Oh, I'm like, because it really turns you into yourself.
Absolutely.
Whereas to think of like what you're talking about, these positive things, it like puts you in a position to be more giving.
Yes. And sometimes when you speak that way to yourself positively, you have to constantly step your game up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't get comfortable. I just broke my strength records last year getting evaluated again at Cirque at 30. I did not think I was going to do that. I didn't know.
But how do they evaluate you?
We get constantly reevaluated.
Like...
Yeah. It's in endurance. It depends on your discipline, but lots of pull-ups, even weights. And I was totally not expecting to do that, but I did. And I personally think it's this, what kind of things am I listening to? What kind of things am I putting into my mind? It's positive, self-challenging, and constant, like, self-motivating words. And I have to step my game up. You kind of have to step your game up if you do that. So it's a choice, I think. If you're stuck in a dark place, it's like you got to find a way to crawl your way out, break the door out, go, crawl your way out. But then it means also you've got to be ready. You've got to step your game up, because life is fleeting, just as that moment, on that stage. And so I tell myself sometimes, time is running out. And as much as it's painful sometimes when you hit that plateau midweek of shows, or it's like, if I just get a wisp of thought of that, it's like, oh, and sometimes I do the best show I ever did when I thought how sore I was or how exhausted I was. And so really, I'm very, very careful with what power I give to words, and how I use words and what kind of words I let in to my mind. I definitely have a little barrier. There's Maya Angelou. I read a lot of Maya Angelou's work, and she's probably the best advice I think she's ever given, but she's given so much amazing. But one thing she says is that she says, you've got to keep this space in your heart which is like your soul in essence, you've got to keep it clean and clear. Because this is a place that you go to. This is the place that we tap into, I believe, when we're present, when we're meditating. This place is where we go to seek for that courage to do what we need to do, to go gather that value before we go give it all on stage, to go gather that wisdom before a serious conversation or a negotiation. This place we tap into should be clean and clear and full of love and strength. So if ever we're in an environment where some individuals are giving us negative things, have said painful things to us, you got to not let that in. You've got to have this border here. I think from a young age, know about that, because it can, when this little clean crystal place of like self-love and affirmation and strength, if it gets damaged, it takes, I think, a lot of repair. And that has been the best. Maya Angelou saying that, I was like, oh, I get so like emotional just thinking about it, because I think she's very right. And this has kept my feet on the ground. And through all of my traveling, it can be a destabilizing career, but I've been able to look at it through a different paradigm and say, like, look at what I've got. I'm going to do my absolute best every day. And I can do this. It's really...
You have.
Oh, yes. I hope it's going well so far.
Well, where do you go? Where do you go next? I'm sitting here thinking, like, you've done, like, what you said to Danielle, the leader of the school. Like, you've worked for all the companies. You've made a name for yourself.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I think, well, for now, I'm definitely, we'll see. I'll probably stay with Bazaar for a bit more. I still treat it like it's kind of my little baby. It's still this fresh, beautiful, vibrant, super energetic show. And the maestro, the lead male character in the show, has so much experience. He's been in the company for 15 years as clown, and he is so fun to work with. So I get stimulated a bit every day.
Nice.
He'll say something. He'll say, that moment when you do this, it gave me this image of, and so it's poetic and it's funny, and I'm learning every day. So I'm stimulated with that as well. And I will definitely continue freelancing with these companies during these tour breaks. And I'll probably, ideally stay with the company as I transition, let's say in next coming years. I really see myself staying on stage until my body goes like, nope. So I'm kind of stubborn. I'd be like, no, I can still do this. But definitely I'm very content with how I've made it. But it's like, okay, now made it, quote unquote. But I definitely...
I think you can say made evolve. It with no quotes. I think you got there. I think you did it.
I still want to continually evolve, but sometimes our evolving starts to change its shape. Maybe, I'm going to evolve into doing, less side planches and stuff, 10 meters in the air. Maybe that evolving is going to be more a tap into my presence as a character, or
sure,
my ability to sing on stage, or, these things. Yeah, I think I can take my evolving to like a second or third degree now a bit, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
That might have been a bit scattered.
No. It makes total sense. Yeah. I have one more question for you, which is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Read the book Crucial Conversations immediately.
Crucial
This is an amazing book. I've read twice now. I would suggest that to any performing artist who's going to work into groups and communicate within an ensemble or go and negotiate contracts, etc. This book was an excellent tool for me to communicate professionally at work, discuss ideas, after an improv, discuss what worked, what didn't, put my word in, and also go into the professional room and discuss contracts, negotiations. Incredible tool for performing artists. So if I read that in my early 20s, if I would have read that before, oh my gosh, it would have just, it was one of those like light bulb moments,
Wow.
So I would suggest that, but also I think I might have worked almost too hard but I still wouldn't change anything about where I am right now. And that's really who molded me right now. But there was a period I was overtraining, under eating, somewhat not nourished. I had like 3 kidney stones in a year at the age of like 20. And at a certain point, I saw my osteopath and he just said, you are training at this extremely high level, too much, and you're not eating enough. It was just one of those periods where I had been told in the past from, of course, as soon as you hit puberty as a gymnast and dance, it's like as a female, you hit puberty, your body starts working against you. As a male, it starts working for you. And also when you hit puberty, that's when everyone starts asking what you've eaten, I'm really, really thankful I didn't totally go down kind of this self-destructive path, but I got a bit close at one point and realized, oh my gosh, this could be taking away from my ability. Food is energy. Mm-hmm. Food is nourishing for my mind. It's important to tap into as well to your pleasure and experience pleasure while eating. Give yourself that. And then also you go hard in the rehearsal room. You go hard on stage. You go hard in your warm-ups and cool downs. And then you deserve that meal. And if I would have tapped into that sooner, I would have been healthier, starting at a younger time. Absolutely,
Thanks. That's a really honest thing to say. I really appreciate you saying that. I think that's a really hard discussion. Isn't had enough.
A lot is expected from us in show business in general from women. It's just a bit more, I myself, as strong as I am, flexible I am, and how feminine that I am. There's times, I once had a dancer who obviously, had her kind of narrow vision mind, but she said to me, I want to do what you do, but I don't want to look like you. And I remember that very well. It was probably 12, 13 years ago. And I remember that day I had this kind of backless leotard, and I remember it. I think it caused me some pain, but I also then tapped into something and said, that's really sad if this individual isn't able to realize beauty in a different shape and form.
Yeah, that's it.
Because probably, she probably wouldn't be able to look like me if she tried, because this is my DNA. This is my DNA,
right?
Too. I have my genetics, and I have, worked myself into the ground, getting to where I am now. And now this is just how my body is. But it's like, a woman can come in so many shapes and sizes and be so feminine. And that's kind of why I like to also share my work. I love the work of still image. I've always loved photography, and I like being the subject. And also it's kind of unique because I like to kind of portray this timeless pinup woman, but it's like I'm also so not your conventional
for sure
shape, these broad shoulders, these lats. I'm doing 22 pull-ups and 10 shows a week, and then I just have these huge thighs. I'm still an acrobat. So buying clothes is challenging a bit for us, I think. I have a good tailor down the street. I take things to him. So I think that we get a bit of a harsher time just in show business in general.
Oh, definitely. Than men, for sure.
It's just getting more talked about now, we are now. But I think it was been under the rug for years and years and years and years. And probably just in the past, 2 years as it started to be discussed. I also believe that as women, as females, to get to the same place professionally as a man in show business, especially, or in anything really, especially when it's something that's physically demanding, we have to be ready to work, up to 10 times harder, because our bodies do things that we don't have control over sometimes. Mm-hmm. And for me to say that, is bothersome, because I'm always like, no, I'm in control. I have, but it does things that it's beautiful what our bodies are capable of. We're life givers, we're nurturers. We live constantly, sometimes with these conflicting emotions on tour, living this intense performing life, but also this desire to make a home, build a family, and also go on stage while taking ibuprofen and putting a heat pack on between cues. This is something we have every month, and it's, to be honest, it's never gets easy. I don't think it ever gets easy, but we as women are quite special creatures because we are very tapped into our emotions then. I believe as a woman, I really practice, okay, wait, what time of the month it is? How am I going to speak right now in this meeting or in this group discussion? Okay, that's probably why I was sensitive yesterday. I might be at this certain time of the month. Okay, we have so many things to think about. And I think just being a woman has made me the best human being I can possibly be because we're reflecting a lot.
That's such a cool way to think about it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we're constantly reflecting, kind of self-evaluating. Okay, that's why that happened. And really, I look at that. I look at being a woman as helping me live, reach my highest and best self. Yeah, each day.
May we all be reincarnated as women.
Amazing.
Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. That was my interview with Lauren Joy Herley. I don't want to say too much at the end of this episode. I feel like I've been going off on kind of longer tangents lately, and I want to rein it back in, mostly because my guests really speak for themselves. The work that they do and what they say on the podcast, I don't know if I need to say anything more. And that goes for Lauren as well. I think the thing I want to point out, though, if we're talking about the idea of being an artist and an athlete, is Lauren really exemplifies both qualities and works incredibly hard to do so. A lot of people are very impressed, as am I, with her strength and her flexibility, her endurance. On stage, she's a powerhouse. But I hope this interview also gave you insight to everything that goes on in Lauren's head, how intelligent she is, how she looks for references like Shakespeare, like Maya Angelou, all of these different literary components that are feeding her artistic life, and how she continues to challenge herself. I think we could all take a page from Lauren's book. To find Lauren online, her gorgeous website is laurenjoyherley.com. And she is on Instagram at Herley Lauren Joy. And you can see her in Bazaar when Cirque du Soleil is back up and kicking. Because it will be. Because the circus goes on. For aerial training tips and inspiration, I am on Instagram at @the_artist_athlete. My website is theartistathlete.com. I'm on Facebook, The Artist Athlete. And if you love what you're listening to, please, please, please head on over to patreon.com/theartistathlete and pledge as much as you want to give us. I put on little behind the scenes there, pictures from my own photo shoots, other things that I do artistically, as well as podcast specific work. So if you are interested in getting a little closer to this project, that's the place to do it. Next week on the podcast, cigar box juggler Eric Bates will be joining us, and I cannot wait to talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast. Straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So, if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and slings and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm a Patreon.
Hello, all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.